It was like a zoo death on an unruly, overcrowded Everest. New Delhi. Ued Doring, a doctor from Arizona, had dreamed his whole life of reaching the top of Mount Everest. But when he summited, climbers were pushing and shoving to take selfies. The flat part of he even had to step around the body of a woman who had just died. It was scary, he said by telephone from Kathmandu, Nepal, where he was resting in a hotel room. It was like a zoo. This has been one of the on Everest, with at least 10 deaths. And at least some. The problem hasn't been avalanches, blizzards, or high winds. Veteran climbers, fly-by-night adventure companies are taking up untrained climbers who pose a risk to everyone on the mountain. And the Nepalese government add to that Everest's inimitable appeal to a growing body of thrill seekers the world over. And the fact that the result is a crowded, unruly scene reminiscent of Lord of the Flies view at 29,000 feet. At that altitude, to reach the summit, climbers shed every pound of gear they can and take with them just enough canisters of compressed oxygen to make it to the top and back down. It is hard to think, according to Sherpas and climbers, some of the deaths this year were caused by people getting held up in the long lines on the last 1,000 feet or so of the climb, unable to get up and down fast enough to replenish their oxygen supply. Others were some climbers did not even know how to put on a pair of crampons, clip-on spikes that increase traction on ice, Sherpas said. Nepal has no strict rules about who can climb Everest, and veteran climbers say that is a recipe for disaster. You have to qualify to do the Ironman, said Alan Arnett, a prominent Everest chronicler and climber. But you don't have to. The last time 10 or more people died on Everest was in 2015, during an avalanche. By some measures, the Everest machine has only gotten more out of control. Last year, veteran climbers, insurance companies, and news organizations exposed a far-reaching conspiracy by guides, helicopter companies and hospitals to bilk millions of dollars from insurance companies by evacuating trekkers with minor signs of altitude sickness. Climbers complain of theft and heaps of trash on the mountain. And earlier this year, but despite complaints about safety lapses, this year the Nepali government issued a record number of permits, 381, as part of a bigger push to commercialize the mountain. Climbers say this is not going to improve, said Lucas Furtenbach, a guide who recently relocated his climbers to the Chinese side of Everest because of the overcrowding in Nepal and the surge of inexperienced climbers. There's a lot of corruption in the Nepali government, he said. They take whatever. Nepali officials denied any wrongdoing and said the trekking companies were the ones responsible for safety on the mountain. Dan Durraj-Meyer, the Director General of Nepal's Department of Tourism, said in an interview on Sunday that the large number of deaths this year was not related to crowds, but because there were fewer good weather days for climbers to safely summit. He said the government, if you really want to limit the number of climbers, Mr. Meyer said, let's just end all expeditions on our holy mountain. To be sure, the race to the top is driven by the weather. May is the best time, but one of the critical problems this year, veterans say, seems to be the sheer number of people trying to reach the summit at the same time. And since there is no climbers themselves, experienced or not, are often so driven to finish their quest that they may keep going even if they see the dangers escalating. A few decades ago, the people climbing Everest were largely experienced mountaineers willing to pay a lot of money. But in recent years, sometimes these trips go very wrong. From interviews with several climbers, it seems that as the groups get closer to the summit, the pressures increase and some people lose their sense of decency. Fatima Dirian, an experienced Lebanese mountaineer, was making her way to the summit recently when less experienced climbers started collapsing in front of her. Temperatures were a lot of people were panicking, worrying about themselves, and nobody thinks about those who are collapsing, Ms. Dirian said. It is a question of ethics, she said. We are all on oxygen. She offered to help some of the sick people, she said, but then calculated she was beginning to endanger herself and kept going to the summit, which is currently measured at 29,029 feet. On the way back down, it was terrible, she said. Around the same time, Riza Ali, an 18-year-old climber from Kashmir, a disputed territory between India and Pakistan, was making his way up the mountain. He said, I saw some people like they had no emotions, he said. I asked people, but Mr. Ali himself took some chances. He has a heart Mr. Doring, the American doctor, represents the other end of the spectrum. At 62, he has climbed peaks all over the world. He read about to prepare for Everest, he slept at home in a tent that simulated high-altitude conditions. His total Everest, still, there was only so much he could prepare for. Last month, you look at a circle of mountain peaks above you and think, what am I doing here? He said. He pressed on. After long, he was so scared, he said, that he plunked down on the snow to keep from losing his balance and had his guide take a picture of him holding up a small sign that said, "Hi Mom, love you." On the way down, he passed 2 more dead bodies in their tents. I was not prepared to see sick climbers being dragged down by the mountain by Sherpas or the surreal experience of finding dead bodies, he said. But on Sunday, he had made it out. He boarded a helicopter. He counted his blisters at the Yak and Yeti Hotel, where he said he treated himself to a thick steak and cracked open a cold beer. Everest vlogger, Kay Schultz, Jeffrey Getlemon and Mujib Mashal reported from New Delhi, and Badra Sharma from Kathmandu, Nepal.
Raindrop, drop top, smoking, no cooking the hot pot. Fucking on your bitch, yeah, that. Looking up.